What if you feel called to chaplaincy as a vocation, and you'd like to find work as a staff chaplain in a prison? It may be different than you think. Well, if you meet the educational standards, you might be interested to know that Christian Chaplains in Coaching is an approved endorser for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. These are excellent paying jobs in high demand. It's a difficult job, though. Both federal and state prisons have a hard time filling the need with qualified candidates. It's a great vocational opportunity for some of you. It will have job expectations, though, that differ from that of a volunteer. In some ways, it can be quite challenging. You'll likely need higher education and clinical pastoral education to be hired, and we can help you with that too. Just check out our website if you'd like to learn more. It's important for you to get a clear picture of the many tasks that you need to fulfill as an institutional chaplain. There will be expectations, frankly, that will make you quite uncomfortable. First, the chaplain is not just seen as a Christian minister housed on site at the prison like the pastor of a church or something. No, the staff chaplain is expected to be the expert in communication, in religion, and in spiritual care. You'll be required to ensure that the facility complies with the laws of the state and policy related to every religion. Legally, the chaplain must accommodate all of the recognized religious groups that are housed at the facility. It's a serious matter for a prison to be lax in relation to the free practice of religion. The staff chaplain is expected to engage with all things religion, and this includes managing donations. All religious groups seek to have material donated for their own practices. It could be things as simple as sacred books, prayer beads, ritual candles, and other items of religious use. It could also be as complicated as housing the pipe and tobacco of the Native American group at your location. Most correctional institutions have clearly spelled out operational policies on what can be possessed by an inmate. As a staff chaplain, you'll need to be the expert when the property department has questions or inmates have complaints about the policy. The chaplain will have to listen to complaints and help inmates follow the proper channels within the Department of Corrections about their own religious needs. And often this will conflict with your own sincerely held religious and Christian beliefs, and you're not going to want to accommodate many of these requests, but you must. The institutional staff chaplain has the duty to assist all religions, to accommodate spiritual care from any religion and not just our own Christian faith. This is different from a ministry volunteer who's free to operate only from within the lane of their own sincerely held Christian beliefs. Volunteers have, frankly, more flexibility. Well, this is not to say that the staff chaplain cannot make a difference. Of course we make a difference. Sometimes an inmate will be drawn to the Christian faith, but this cannot be forced upon them uninvited. Be aware of the expectations and differences between chaplains on staff and those who volunteer. For this reason, the Christian staff chaplain will do well to collaborate with volunteer chaplains and ministers who can provide service to the population. The staff chaplain must provide for and also relate generously and fairly with inmates from every religious practice. These inmates will come to you with questions and concerns about their own desires and their own religious needs. They have the right to accommodation, and the staff chaplain is their liaison. As institutional chaplains, we can see these interactions as avenues by which we can show the grace of God while hoping and praying for the opportunity to share Christ. Many who attempt to transition from volunteer chaplaincy to staff chaplaincy in a prison find it a very challenging experience. Expectations and duties will depend on the security level and the size of the facility. Staff chaplains may be expected to attend and observe religious services, which could make you very uncomfortable. You must make sure the groups are actually practicing their religion and not using the time to pass on information to each other or organize themselves for nefarious purposes. As a Christian chaplain, you cannot be compelled to lead these services in a way that compromises your own convictions, but you may have to listen to teaching that goes against your sincerely held beliefs. For instance, there will be times when you oversee the services of a group, such as, say, the Asatru group. They open their services by standing up and chanting Hail Odin in the 4 cardinal directions. What might you do as you're sitting in the service? Perhaps you'll just sit during the service without participating. But might this be seen by them as disrespectful? And out of respect, you might tell the Goeth, which is their term for leader, that you do not plan to stand during their opening of the hall where they chant Hail Odin. But you should explain that you mean no disrespect and offer to come inside after the opening is completed. These are the kinds of accommodations you should be making. It may create a positive and respectful relationship with the leader, since he'll feel respected in his own religious practice. But you have the right to make it clear that you must observe, but you will not participate, since you don't share their beliefs. Now, the institutional chaplain will manage the religious calendar for every one of the groups that are housed in the prison setting. You'll accommodate everything from satanic to Islamic. Likely, the facility where you serve will have many different religious groups, and you must make certain that each one receives their special meetings and their holidays are accommodated. This includes notifying security, notifying administration of the religious policy in place for each holiday. Again, religion is a high-stakes issue within the Department of Corrections, and you want to be sure that everything you do comes under the guidance of policy. So you'll need to be the resident expert on religions while staying in your own lane of the Christian faith. It's a tightrope. The primary objective of the institution is to meet its legal requirements and to avoid lawsuits. That's what it wants. So the warden may see this as the primary purpose of the chaplain, which goes against our Christian desire to share the truth of Christ. It's a challenge for sure. Unfortunately, lawsuits are part of the prison environment. And as chaplains, we're aware that we must conduct ourselves firmly, consistently, and fairly with all of the religious groups in order to avoid becoming involved or implicated in serious litigation. The best way to do this is to just follow state policy and not waver from that policy. You must follow policy as established by the state, not policy as is demanded by any particular group. Showing favoritism or withholding state-mandated rights could bring unheeded scrutiny. As chaplains, we can't circumvent this custodial role. We have to fulfill this work diligently. Within the prison, there are religious volunteers, too, who support the religious practice of inmates. The staff chaplain will interact with these volunteers who are serious practitioners of other religions. You'll need to be respectful of their religious practice and beliefs and facilitate their connection with the inmate communities that they serve. For example, you'll interact with leaders from religious groups like Jehovah's Witnesses, Buddhist, Muslim, Wicca, Hindu, Catholic, and others that you may have never even heard of. The role of a chaplain requires that we treat every volunteer with generosity and with kindness, helping them with any questions they may have about their group and how they can practice their religion safely within the prison. The prison chaplain is also expected to make themselves available if an inmate is going through a death in the family. As a staff chaplain, you'd be expected to sit with inmates as they may have watched the funeral of their loved ones while they grieve and while they're weeping. It's the role of the chaplain to provide a safe space for inmates to grieve in private, no matter what their religious practice may be or their lack of religious practice. Not all inmates choose to visit with the chaplain during a bereavement, but we are expected to be available when there's an expressed need. Depending on the facility and its policy, staff chaplains are given access to inmate housing and the restorative housing unit. That's where inmates are held who are having disciplinary issues, or maybe they need to be watched because of a mental health concern. Chaplains are expected to make rounds, to connect with inmates right in their environment, and make themselves available for conversation with those very inmates. It requires a certain amount of cultural sensitivity, wouldn't you agree? This is especially expected in the restorative housing unit where inmates are in individual cells without much outside connection. And typically, volunteer chaplains or ministers will not have access to these housing areas and will likely serve only in designated areas that are set apart for your particular services. This ability to do rounds for a staff chaplain is an amazing privilege, and it grants the opportunity to connect with inmates right where they live, inviting them into a relationship regardless of their beliefs or culture or worldview or their lifestyle. You'll have the opportunity for deep and meaningful discussions with many of the inmates just by making yourself available to them. Some call this ministry by walking around. Others call it presencing, or a ministry of presence. As a staff chaplain, you can arrange private counseling sessions with inmates who want to speak confidentially with you about their lives. In many prisons, the staff chaplain may employ inmate clerks. These clerks assist in fulfilling the lengthy list of tasks the chaplains have to do. It may include setting up and tearing down services, keeping track of religious group attendance, writing memos, or organizing donations. These inmate clerks become your inside team. This may create a wonderful opportunity to be a positive influence in their lives by creating an encouraging and a joyful work environment. You may spend many hours each week with these clerks, and for this reason, you'll want to find trustworthy and hardworking clerks. The role of a staff chaplain also gives us a significant opportunity for relationship with the prison staff. As the chaplain, you will care for staff members who have very difficult jobs in that prison. They're dealing with personal struggles just like everybody else is. We must serve them as well. They have great stress in their jobs, and the chaplain can help make that bearable. As chaplains, we can model healthy and respectful interaction between staff with inmates, as well as inmates with inmates and staff with staff. It can create an improving environment and a culture of the prison that reduces stress that's caused by sharp and intensive, insensitive communication patterns. These are just some of the ways that a staff chaplain works with the institution of a prison. It's very different from the role of a volunteer chaplain or minister who's free to stay within the lane of their own Christian faith. The role may vary based on the security level and state setting, but this role is not for the faint of heart, believe me. The chaplain will deal with many stressors that come from both inmates and the administration, expectations from both sides. And Christian chaplains will be challenged to hold on to their convictions while helping other religious groups. This often means living in a tension where we're seeking to witness for Jesus, but we're also custodians for other religious programs. Therefore, those pursuing this role should be ready to work with other religious groups within a diligence and with a kindness, while also being gently bold and honest about our own deeply held convictions. At the end of the day, the work of a prison chaplain is immensely rewarding, and you will have opportunities to change lives otherwise unreachable by the general public. Could this be for you? Well, reach out to us if you would like to learn more, and let's find out.